7 News Detroit this morning at 6 starts right now.
Is it tough love or is it too far? A judge ordering a teen to be placed in handcuffs and threatening her with jail time for falling asleep during a field trip in his courtroom.
You fall asleep in my courtroom one more time, I'm putting you in the back, understood?
It's totally inappropriate.
The judge's defense of his actions and why others in the legal community say his actions were too severe.
And resuming construction, a megachurch on Detroit's east side could be on the path to completion after a 20-year delay.
That news, music to your ears?
Music, a symphony, absolutely. That's extremely exciting.
There's a ton of work to be done.
We're hearing from the Detroit natives who have waited years for this.
Plus, news parents need to hear as we prepare for students to head back to school. I have an alert from the CDC about a childhood respiratory illness suddenly spiking.
I want to get to that. Very important updates for you this morning on this Wednesday. It is August 14th. So glad you're waking up with us. I'm Alicia Smith.
And I'm Keenan Smith. And as you can tell, we have a jam-packed show this morning. But nothing is more important than getting you prepared to step outside with a look at the forecast.
Yeah, let's check in with 7 First Alert meteorologist Mike Taylor with what we can expect today. Morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning, and happy to say, calling for a repeat. The lawns will need some help as far as watering them, but other than that, it's forecast perfection once again for Metro Detroit and for much of the Great Lakes. 65 degrees out the door for downtown Detroit, the relative humidity 81%, and the dew points at 59. And that's still comfortable, but you'll notice it's starting to climb, and the winds are calm, and that'll be the case for much of the day as well. Tracking a little bit of fog out there. It's not quite dense enough to slow you down, but you'll notice it in some pockets of Metro Detroit, especially around Ann Arbor as well as Pontiac, and definitely in Port Huron right now. Temperatures are in the upper 50s to low 60s. That fog reported in Pontiac around Port Huron and Mount Clemens. We will warm up. The temperature trend for today gets us right back into the low 80s with the light winds and sunny skies.
Taking a look at the morning drive, and overall looking good out there this morning. In the northbound lanes of I-75 from Telegraph to the Ambassador Bridge, that's a 10-minute drive, so we're looking good there. If you're heading to the airport this morning in the westbound lanes of I-94 from the Southfield Freeway to I-275, a 7-minute drive. A live look now from Chopper 7. Chopper 7 over I-94 and 696 this morning, where you can see we are moving smoothly out there. I'll let you know if I see anything that could slow you down.
Well, a judge's actions against a teen on a field trip to his courtroom has some asking, is that judge out of order?
The teenager fell asleep and ended up in a jail uniform and in handcuffs. Judge Kenneth King is standing by the way he handled this situation, but a law professor is taking issue with what happened.
Well, 7 News Detroit reporter Brittany Toulis is live outside 36th District Court in Detroit this morning with video showing how it all played out and what people are saying about the judge's decision. Brittany?
Yeah, Keenan, Alicia, this all started with a Greening Detroit field trip here to the 36th District Court. And in that courtroom video, you can see Judge King getting agitated and calling out that 16-year-old multiple times for what he says is being disrespectful in his courtroom. That field trip ending in what the judge is calling his version of scared straight.
One thing you'll learn about my courtroom is that I am not a toy. I'm not to be played with.
A Greening Detroit field trip to the 36th District Court interrupted by a sleeping student and more than a talking to by Judge Kenneth King.
You fall asleep in my courtroom one more time, I'm putting you in the back, understood?
Judge King first removed the teen from court.
And I thought that would be embarrassment enough. But then she came back in the courtroom with the same kind of attitude.
When she came back, Judge King says her attitude came with her. He then ordered the court to put the teen in handcuffs, then a jail uniform.
So that was my own version of scared straight. Her overall attitude is what ticked me off a little bit, that, she was just, like whatever, just the rolling of the eyes, the whole body language.
Greening Detroit saying in response to the judge's lesson, quote, his methods were unacceptable, and the young lady was traumatized by the judge's unnecessary disciplinary treatment and scolding. A University of Detroit Mercy law professor agrees.
But really overstepped the aspect of treating this young girl in a courteous way.
Judge King doubling down on the move.
So do I have any reservations? Do I think I was heavy-handed in what I did? No, I don't, because I'll do whatever it needs to be done to reach these kids to make sure that they don't end up in front of me.
Judge King also says there was no real chance he was going to put the teen in jail. He also says he's reached out to her in hopes of mentoring her. Live in downtown Detroit, I'm Brittany Toulis for 7 News Detroit this morning.
Yeah, you can see how people on both sides of this issue would have a lot to say. Brittany Toulis, live for us downtown. Thank you, Brittany.
We are raising the voices of people living in a Detroit senior living facility after a deadly fire. Investigators say that someone spilled water which got into an electrical outlet in the 10th floor stairwell of the Kemper Stephen apartment building right there on Washington Boulevard on Monday. The city says a woman died after suffering a medical crisis while evacuating. A woman living on the 14th floor says that she kept calling the victim, who was unresponsive. She calls what happened an avoidable accident.
I believe she panicked and was doing it on her own, and she did not make it. But again, it shouldn't have happened.
It's heartbreaking. Residents say the apartment management is allowing residents to stay there or at a hotel. One tells 7 News Detroit the current conditions are not good for seniors and only one elevator works.
Well, now to an update many native Detroiters wondered would ever come. The construction of the Perfecting Church on Woodward Avenue is set to resume after a 20-year pause. Now, years ago, 7 News Detroit first covered the announcement of Pastor Marvin Winans' dream to build a new 35,000 square foot megachurch. Well, then last year, we got a sneak peek of that facility, which sits on 16 acres of land. After legal back and forth involving the delayed construction, the city is now allowing the church to move forward with completion expected by fall of 2026. Now, the plan comes with a lot of amenities to develop the neighborhood, and we wanted to know how Detroiters were feeling about the progress and what they're most excited about.
The lighting that it would bring, I'm excited about the privacy it would bring and the security.
I'm hoping that with it being a church, that they will be more involved with what's going on in the community.
Well, we have tried to reach the church's leadership, but have not yet heard back.
One of the big events during the week of the Woodward Dream Cruise is shifting into high gear to a new space this year.
Yeah, the Corvettes on Woodward Drive to End Hunger kicks off at 10 this morning.
And the event used to be in Birmingham, where some car owners were a little nervous about limited parking, but it's now being held at the M1 Concourse in Pontiac. The Corvettes on Woodward event will kick off a 4-day Dream Cruise Festival at the 87-acre, 1.5-mile performance track.
And of course, 7 is your home for the Woodward Dream Cruise. Join us for our Dream Cruise Prime Time Special this Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. It will be a blast.
It will indeed. And hey, Lions fans, get ready. Our team's going to be taking the field this Saturday in Kansas City for their second preseason game, but they'll likely be without some of their key players, and that has a lot of folks in Detroit on edge.
Well, thankfully, Detroit fans can put some of those worries to rest. On Monday, the Lions saw running back Jahmyr Gibbs left practice what appeared to be with a leg injury. ESPN's Adam Schefter says Gibbs has a hamstring injury, but that's all we know at this point. And we may not get an update until tomorrow morning, since Dan Campbell is not scheduled to speak to the media today. But there is some positive news with their young cornerbacks. First-round draft pick Terrion Arnold and fellow rookie Ennis Rakestraw. The NFL Network reports that Arnold has a pec injury, but is not expected to miss any regular season action. While Rakestraw, who left with an ankle injury, took to Instagram telling fans he's just fine.
Good to hear that. Mike?
Great weather in store for us in Metro Detroit, with temperatures climbing well into the 80s with lots of sun. We will talk about some big changes moving in for tomorrow into the weekend.
Taking a live look now at the morning drive from I-94 and Rotunda. You can see traffic moving smoothly. No crashes to tell you about.
Time now is 6:09, trying to save the SAVE plan.
Yeah, the latest efforts from the Biden administration to stop an effort to pause a student loan forgiveness plan.
Plus making the most of a tiny room. As college students prepare to head to their dorms, I'm going to tell you what you can do to maximize that space. Time now is 6:12. Here's a rundown of today's top stories. The U.S. State Department is giving the green light to a potential $20 billion weapons package to Israel. The anticipated sale includes F-15 fighter jets, missiles, and explosives. Lawmakers have 30 days to block the sale or let it proceed. If approved, it will take years before the weapons are delivered.
Well, the Education Department is asking the Supreme Court to lift a nationwide block on President Biden's latest student loan repayment plan. A federal appeals court banned implementation of the SAVED plan last week. It calls for slashing monthly payments and speeding up the path to loan forgiveness.
As another tropical storm bears down on U.S. territories, the Federal Emergency Management Agency is announcing its disaster fund has run out of money. The agency's administrator says for now, FEMA will only provide money for immediate needs. FEMA is hoping Congress will pass a $9 billion supplemental request to help replenish that disaster fund.
Well, now to a story affecting families just as kids head back to school. The CDC is reporting an uptick of a childhood respiratory illness called fifth disease. It comes with the telltale bright red rosy cheeks. It's a rash on the cheek, along with flu-like symptoms and joint pain. It's a common disease. In fact, half the population will have detectable antibodies of fifth disease by the time they reach 20 years old. The disease usually occurs in late winter and early spring in kids between 4 and 10 years old, but we're seeing a spike now, perhaps because pandemic precautions led to a drop in infections and therefore a drop in immunity. With so many kids heading back to school in just a couple of weeks, I wanted to see what parents would need to do if their kids develop symptoms of fifth disease or come home with those symptoms. Well, I checked state guidance on communicable diseases, and here's what I found. The state says kids do not need to be excluded from school if the rash is diagnosed as fifth disease by a healthcare provider. And while you're watching out for symptoms of fifth disease, you might want to keep an eye out for COVID-19 symptoms as well. A summer surge of COVID could continue right into the school year. The CDC says wastewater surveillance data shows very high levels of COVID in 29 states. Right now, Michigan is seeing high levels of COVID activity. Well, I wanted to take a closer look in Michigan now. There are reported cases over time, and you can see the upward trend starting in late June. But there was a bit of a dip in the last week. Of course, we'll continue to monitor to see if that dip continues as we head closer to back to school.
Yeah, timing of that, not great at all. But you know about it, so you can be careful. 6:15 is the time right now. We got a hazy view as we take this live look over Lake St. Clair and the Detroit River on this Wednesday. It is August 14th.
There was those like big billowy clouds out there yesterday. I don't know if you guys noticed that or not.
I love cumulus clouds.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we're getting more of those today.
I think we'll get a couple more, especially in the afternoon, the heat of the afternoon, but it's going to be another nice day. I mean, temperatures in the 80s, humidity is going to be comfortable for now, but you'll probably notice the humidity slowly starting to creep up on us throughout the course of the afternoon. So here's a look at the numbers, seeing some fog in Pontiac as well as areas like Ann Arbor at 54, Howell at 58, you're at 54 degrees in Port Sanilac, and a few of us are holding on to the 60s. So it is a nice start out there, but we're still tracking that chance at least of seeing a stray shower. But aside from that, numbers back into the 80s, 84 in Lapeer, 82 in Mount Clemens and Monroe at 82. So back in the 80s we go. For tonight, skies will clear up, so any clouds that develop during the afternoon, we will have a window where the skies will clear up. Then, by this time tomorrow, you'll notice the clouds rolling right back in to Metro Detroit. That's out ahead of our next weather maker. Believe it or not, that system actually has a little something to do with what's happening in the tropics. I'll tell you why in just a moment. First off, an update on Ernesto. Still a strong tropical storm, winds at 70 miles an hour. The advisory at 5 a.m., so that's the last update. This system is going to be making a turn to the north, and it's going to get into the middle of the Atlantic. As it's doing that, it's going to really hold up or a blocking pattern in the atmosphere. So with this storm here, the storm that's expected to arrive tomorrow night into Friday is actually going to get stuck until that hurricane moves out of the way. It won't be able to progress to the east. The bad news is that's going to force it to slow down, and it's going to park itself over the Great Lakes, not just for a day or two, but it looks like the chance of rain will get started on Thursday, heaviest on Friday, and then will linger Saturday into early Sunday, and finally it leaves us alone. The bad news is that's during the dream cruise, so the chance of rain will be there, even though it won't be a washout.